Let's break this bitch down. Act 1. Let's set some stuff up.
So our story opens in 1988 with Fancy. Yeah, that's her actual name. It's Fancy.
So she's being Francine something. Franklin. Yeah, I think I wrote it down.
We'll break it down here in a little bit because she'll tell it to him,
Fancy,
which makes it even better. Yeah, but it starts out with her opening the door and being super creepy to these two Girl Scouts. And at one point she looks at this little white girl and she says, "Oh, you're the most adorable girl I ever did see." And just completely ignoring the African American kid, which I was like, okay, Southern accent, racist, kind of fits in. And then it cuts to later that night, and you see somebody breaking into a house. You don't really know what's going on. And my favorite part of this whole scene is you see this arm reach over the bed, open a drawer. There's a pistol in there. From the moment that person gets out of bed, the camera just tracks crotch level all the way to the stairs until it finally pans down the stairs and you see somebody run across. So you have like the loudest burglar in the world stealing from this house, right? Just running through this house. Hardwood floor. It's an old Southern house, so hardwood floor, everything, right? He starts stealing some stuff and then he hears a sound and panics. And then you learn he's also the dumbest burglar because he runs to a clearly locked door.
How did he get in? That was my question.
That's my question too.
Why didn't he go back out the way he came in?
Yeah, like why didn't you go out the way you came in? You run to the front door that is locked. It's chain locked. Like you could see it's bolted. And before he can get the door open, our hero, Mr. Nicolas Cage, shows up with a huge grin on his face and says, "You picked a hell of a wrong house to rob or break in," or whatever his line is. The kid panics as he feels the gun at the back of his head. The kid panics, runs into another room, jumps out a window.
Through a window.
Jumps off through the window. Sorry. Thank you. He jumps through the window. He jumps off the deck. He starts running. And as he's about to hop over this white picket fence, Nic Cage just blasts this guy. Just blasts him. And it causes that fence to break. Obviously, huge plot point right here coming up. Just remember that fence. So after that, it cuts to Buddy. He's all bloodied up. Being interviewed by Kelsey Grammer.
I had so many questions about this. Like, why is he like? It looks like somebody just dripped a bunch of like fake blood onto him, like right before they started filming the scene. Like nobody wiped him off or
no. It looks like they took a paintbrush and just started flicking it at him. Yeah. So he's
gave
sitting
him
there
a
all bloodied up.
Nothing.
Yeah. So like you assume that he's the guy that got shot, right? Even though he's beat up. You're kind of sitting there like, what? Yeah. Spoiler alert. You assume he's the guy that got shot, right? And my question, like you guys said, is like, why was he still bloody? Don't you think paramedics would have taken a look at him? They would have cleaned him up. He probably would be in some kind of suit because they would have booked him. But whatever.
We don't have those things in the South.
Then you get into Kelsey Grammer. He's doing his best foghorn, leghorn impression while questioning Buddy and asking him, "Do you believe in God or not?" And he tells him that he wants to hear his side of what happened. Yeah, it's in the South, And then he wants to know, "I want to hear your side of the story." But he says it like the most condescending way. I don't know. That was my impression of it. Like he doesn't really believe that this guy's going to have a good story to tell.
Yeah, he's a terrible detective.
Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. He was an awful detective.
He knows he's right, though.
That's the best detective. So, that's what makes the best detectives.
So Buddy starts telling his story, and it cuts to him talking to some random guy, trying to convince this guy to buy into his investments or in his investing scheme at some random podunk cafe.
It was just super vague. Like, what the hell was he trying to sell? Yeah,
I thought he was like a con artist that he was trying to get him to invest in some fake thing. It's never addressed again, I don't think.
Yeah, they never say what it was. And then, like, I thought it would maybe come back later, but it never did. You know, like, I have some dreams and I got some things in the works. He kind of says that to his wife, but, like, never explains what it is. And, you know, like, is it related to the business he already works at, which is also super vague? Like, I think he says
get an idea that he worked for a business.
Yeah, he said, like, Charlie got a call and they want me to come fix a fence.
Yeah, it was just like it was the most generic. Like, if you're trying to write like business stuff, he just has papers and he's like, look, the numbers are going up and they keep going up, and when you got a good thing, you got a good thing, and you got to get it on the ground floor of this thing, and like that was the dialogue.
Yeah, it really was.
That guy didn't say a word.
Yeah, he didn't say a word.
Not a word. Probably so they didn't have to pay him for saying anything.
Yeah. He's pitching this idea that makes no sense. I mean, it's just super vague. And I too thought the same thing. I thought he was trying to con him. I was like, okay, so this kid's just going to be a con artist. So my mind's thinking, okay, he's going to try to con Nic Cage. And at the time, it wasn't really clear to me that Fancy was Nic Cage's wife in the movie. But so I thought it was going to be a whole con thing that goes south. So
that sort of tracks, actually, because they talk about, like, he robbed a liquor store at one point.
They bring that up too. Yeah. So it's like you just get all this weird information. It's not very good about building out this character or setting him up, because he's just like, well, I don't really know anything about him. But he's talking to that guy. The guy has no interest in it at all. Never says anything, like you guys said. And you hear a baby start crying in the background, and all of a sudden buddy's like, oh, my wife's here. Okay, hold on. I'm going to, we'll talk about these investments later. And turns around and he goes and sits down with his wife and their newborn baby that just conveniently happened to be at the cafe.
Yeah. And I think it's the only cafe in the whole town, you know?
I mean, it must be.
You're not going to set up two locations for shooting. Like, you can just do one.
$5 million budget, guys. Shoot everything in the same place. We'll return to this cafe later.
I even thought that. I was like, I was still on the train that he was trying to scam the guy. So I'm like, he goes from scamming him to turning around and walking 6 feet over to sit with his wife to talk about how he failed at scamming the guy. He's still sitting over at the table.
She's like, I watched you fail. I watched you. You don't have to tell me you failed.
You're real bad at this.
Our baby's coughing. So she's talking about how
which made me think, like, were they dining in the restaurant and then he just went out and started talking to a guy in the parking lot and that's where this whole thing started, or what? There's questions.
Where those deleted scenes would have really helped out.
Yeah. Director's commentary. So he sits down with her and she's, explaining how they need money because the baby's coughing. She's offering to get a job at the cafe, and, he's a good old Southern man, so ain't no wife of mine working. You belong in the house like a good wife kind of mentality. And he says, we're going to get this money. I just got a call and they specifically requested me to go fix this fence or to do this work. I don't think it's clear at the time. It sets up, that things are a little rocky. And then he talks to her about, I'd really like to take a trip with you, just the two of us. It's been a while since we've been intimate. And she says the classic lady thing. Well, I just don't feel so sexy now that I had a baby. All this could have, like, this whole movie could have been avoided if the two couples, Fancy and Walter, and Buddy, and I can't remember his wife's name, if they would have just, like, the couples took care of each other intimately.
Lisa. I wrote it down. I think it's mentioned one time.
This whole movie goes down this weird sexual rabbit hole, but if, like, Walter and Fancy had just taken care of each other and Lisa and Buddy had taken care of each other, you could have avoided a lot of this. I mean, probably
I would say the
thing.
First, like, 2/3 at least. The last act kind of
the last
takes a weird
story within the story.
One thing we should mention real quick is we just revealed that it wasn't Buddy who fell through the fence, because he was specifically requested to come and fix this fence. So now we know Buddy wasn't the person who was shot the night before. So
after him and his wife talk and she lets him down and tells him, I just need more time, even though it's been 6 months. He takes his sexual frustration and heads off to Fancy and Nic Cage's house, a.k.a. Walter. That's Nic Cage's character's name. When he shows up, Walter gives him the greatest look up and down ever captured in film.
I love that. Hits him with so much, man. That made me laugh so hard. This, like, look where he, like, He like looks him in the eye, then he looks him in the stomach, then he looks him at the feet, and then goes back to the stomach, then back up to the face. So good.
And then so you can almost hear the director giving the directions.
I feel like that was another Nic Cage choice of like, how can I make this interesting? I got an idea.
Yeah.
Like you would never see that in any other movie.
No. It was, it's like boom, 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 boom. And then he hits him with his character's signature kind of Beavis and Butthead style laugh, which he does a lot throughout the film, which there's a moment that that one of you guys gets to talk about that's like mint acting on his part.
So the Mustang one?
Yeah. So Walter tells Buddy if he can get the fence fixed before the storm hits, he'll give him an extra $250. This is when Buddy tries to negotiate with him and up it to $300. Walter drops the price down to $240, which leads to Buddy somehow knowing that Walter was in the military. I guess it's because he's good at negotiating. I wasn't really clear on how that.
That's one of my big questions for the end is like, what gave away that he was in the military aside from apparently he's good at negotiation, should carries himself a certain way. No, I didn't see any tattoos. There's no
tattoos, no haircut, nothing. No, I mean, he's wearing just like normal clothes. Like that, I had to stop and rewind that part and rewatch it because I was like, I must have missed something.
Yeah.
Nope. He's just like, you know what they call Marines?
He read the script. He read the script, so he knew that he was.
Oh, touche. He had the people in the curtain. But so for all of a sudden that comes up, he's like, he knows that he's in the military, and Walter says he was in the Marines back in Nam, and Buddy says,
we should point out
Navy.
that this takes place in 1988, so it's not like present day. So Nicolas Cage is not like a 70-year-old man who fought in Nam.
Right. Yeah. He was, but I believe he says he was 17 years old when he joined the Marines and went to Nam.
Which I have a thing about that later.
Yeah, I saw that. we'll get to that one,
The timeline fits, he's a middle-aged man. So Buddy tells him that he's in the Navy, and then, because he was a squid, Walter instantly hates Buddy. He doesn't like him.
Very well-known hatred between Marines and Navy people that always kind of skirts the line of like, I don't actually hate you, but I'm gonna talk about you like I hate you all the time. Right. That's always been such a weird thing. There's this whole movie called Chasers. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
It's a pretty good kind of overview of that hatred.
Does it have Nic Cage?
It doesn't.
I wish.
That it doesn't matter.
Cut out that movie reference. so then it changes, and we see Fancy. Still can't get over that name. Dramatically walking down the stairs, singing a song, some Southern racist song, most likely. And you're kind of like, okay, well, this is weird. Who's she singing to? And you see her round the corner, and she's singing to Nic Cage. He's nice and cozy, sitting in his what we deemed as his pass out chair.
Yeah.
He's got some shades on. Now, mind you, this is something that he does a lot in the movie. Sit in that chair, passed out.
Yep.
She is wearing like a kind of a sheer robe, and you can kind of see she's got lingerie under it. And she walks up to Walter and takes his shades off, and turns out he's fast asleep, which pisses her off because guess what today is? Their anniversary.
Asleep or blackout drunk?
Tomato. In her eyes, it's still bad, right? She's pissed. She's pretty pissed off at that part. They end up making their way upstairs. He chases her upstairs, apologizing, and then we have this really awkward scene that I really didn't understand. I still don't understand what the point of it was because nothing. I mean, I don't know.
A lot of things don't track in this movie for whatever reason.
Yeah. Especially around their relationship.
Yeah.
So she starts
and
telling
the ending, what actually happens at the ending is so confusing. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we're laying the groundwork.
This is confusing part number one about their relationship, in my personal opinion. She's pretty pissed, right? So they're upstairs. She starts going on this tangent about, she's pissed off that he won't paint their house, he won't mow their lawn, and he won't make love to her like a real man. Instead, all he does is just sit on his lazy ass and get drunk all day. And so you see this fire just erupt in Walter's eyes, and he slams her up against the bedpost and starts telling her not to push him, to which she says he doesn't have the balls to hurt her. And this is like what kicks off this weird series of actions between these two freaking lunatics, where they're trying to hurt each other one way or another, whether it's physically or emotionally. Or, I mean, honestly, at one point when I was watching this movie, I thought, this is just a cuckold movie. Like,
yeah,
Nic Cage
that's what
is
I
a
thought it was
cuckold.
going to turn into.
Yeah. And then, I won't spoil that part. You can just stay tuned and find out if I was right. I was aroused the whole time, I'll tell you that, but I won't tell you if I was right or not.
Katie Strickland is she's pretty hot in this movie.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
I've never seen her before,
Yeah, and she did such a great
made me a fan.
She was so good in that role too. I give a lot of credit to her carrying a lot of the pretty poorly crafted scenes. She was great. So after they exchange those weird words, he leaves her, and she immediately spots our fresh young hunk of meat out there fixing that fence. She decides, you know what, it's hot outside, I'm gonna head down and give him some lemonade like a good old Southern woman does. But before she heads down, she starts playing with the voodoo doll. And you start overhearing reports of a missing person who matched the description of the gentleman that got shot at the beginning of the movie. Now,
through every screenwriter's best friend, the ambiguous off-screen audio of a news broadcast.
Yep.
For when you want to
Breaking
inject
news.
any type of story. For when you want to inject anything that needs to be said that you forgot to have the characters themselves talk about.
Yeah.
Just have a news broadcast bring it up.
Yeah, which is convenient. It's convenient, right? So, she heads downstairs and it cuts to Buddy outside, and he's moving a bunch of the broken pieces of fence around. And the camera specifically shows one piece with just blood all over it. And he grabs it, doesn't even think anything of it. He just puts it in the back of the truck.
Didn't even get it on his hand or what?
No.
I mean,
yeah,
you would think he would notice it in some way.
Yeah, and kind of question it. But no, he's just oblivious. He's thinking about that money. So
$240.
Yeah, $240.
Yeah,
minus expenses.
Which, if adjusted for inflation, his original quote was $200, which was $440 in 1988. So it seems pretty expensive to fix like a 6-foot section of fence. But I don't know. What do I know?
Was it even that? It didn't even seem like that big of a section. Anyways, he
specifically says it's 7 feet.
7 feet.
Shows that scene. He doesn't even acknowledge the blood. He's whatever. He's like, whatever. Then it shows Walter starting to board up the house. And you're like, okay, I guess he's getting ready for the storm. Oh yeah, he also needs to board up that busted window that kid jumped through. Mm-hmm. And
did we bring up that there's a hurricane on the way?
They say storm. At first, it's just a storm.
Yeah.
It's not until this point where they start talking about the hurricane.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
He's busy boarding up the house. It's in the south, so you start to kind of get an idea. Okay, well, it's most likely a hurricane or a pretty bad storm that's gonna be coming through. And then Fancy comes out and gives Buddy the lemonade, and they start talking, and it's super sexually charged and uncomfortable because Nic Cage is in the background the whole time just watching them. And that's where I was like, yeah, this movie's just about a dude that likes to watch his wife get nailed.
Yeah.
Because it's really awkward. So she comes out, brings out the lemonade, and she introduces herself as Francine May Franklin, or Fancy for short, which I the dumbest thing. I don't understand why. Anyways.
There's apparently when I was watching it with Sheena, my wife, she talked about a Dolly Parton song where one of the characters in the Dolly Parton song's name was Fancy as well. So apparently it is a common Southern name. Yeah.
I could see it being a pet name for your kid, and then it just sort of becomes your nickname.
Kind of sticks. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that.
Because if your name's Francine, it's either Fran or Franny or Francie. Oh, fancy.
But for a bunch of Yankees like ourselves, Fancy is pretty stupid.
Yeah, it's fancy. It's pretty down to us up here.
Big city folk.
Us big city folk.
Big city folk.
With our big college degrees.
So they both creepily stare at each other in a seductive manner. She ends up, taking the glass back, which, okay, I'm glad that you guys noticed this too, because this is going to drive me nuts. He drinks like the whole freaking glass of iced tea, and then it cuts to her about to head back in, and it's almost full again.
Yep.
And I thought in my head, well, maybe the ice melted because it's hot outside. And I was like, wait, no, the ice is the same.
Yeah.
That threw me off. I was like, okay.
Full, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's like, nobody caught that in editing and decided,
what
like, maybe we should. Yeah. But then again, $5 million, they got to move on. Let's keep moving, guys.
Yeah.
So she walks away, and as she walks away, he manages to somehow miss the nail and just hammer his thumb.
Well, he's staring at her ass the whole time,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the camera angle wasn't very good at setting that up, because it really looks like he's just really bad at what he does, which we'll get into later. So he hammers his thumb, screams out. She hears it. She tells him, come inside. We got to get it fixed up. And he's like, no, it's okay. I need to finish this. I've been working on it for like 5 hours, and I've only got like one board nailed in, and I got to get it done before the storm. But she's like, no, come on. So she gets him inside. She fixes up his thumb. She seductively kisses his boo-boo right as Walter walks in, and he has the angriest look on his face.
Which is amazing.
And to my point, like, I still thought, okay, this dude just wants his wife to get nailed and wants to hear about it. Like, he's digging this.
Yeah.
Then it cuts to Walter just getting hammered on PBR, which, I don't know about you guys, but my personal opinion about PBR is it tastes like piss sandwich. But, we can leave that alone.
Yeah.
So he's getting hammered.
It's warm in the Louisiana sun.
Yeah.
On the
delicious.
So he's out there getting hammered on PBR, smoking a cigar, which he does quite a bit in a weird way. It's like a crutch for his character.
Yeah.
And as he finishes these PBRs, he starts to place the bottles on the fence post right by Buddy where he's working. And he kind of looks at Buddy. Buddy looks at him. They share an awkward look, and Nic Cage just ends up wandering off. You're like, okay, well, I kind of get where this is going. And then it takes a little bit of a twist from what I originally thought. I thought he's just going to stand on the porch and start hammering it with the pistol, but he's up on the roof shooting with the freaking hunting rifle, just blowing up these bottles right next to Buddy. And Buddy's like, what the heck, man? Like, what the hell are you doing? And then has a huge kind of freak out, but it doesn't stop him from working on the fence. He goes back to working. I don't know about you guys, but if someone's shooting bottles with a rifle next to me, I'm gonna step aside and be like, all right, man, you do you. I'm gonna take a flavor.
I'm leaving.
Worth $300 or whatever.
Yeah, maybe I'm gonna get out of here because you seem a little unhinged and you're hammered on beer and God knows what else. Mm-hmm. Buddy's upset, obviously, right? But then he has this freak out, and Nic Cage is like, "Oh, there he is, yeah," in this creepy way. And then it cuts to it's dark outside.
That was such a weird moment for me. Because I was like, what? So he's like, oh, yeah, there you are. I got to the real Buddy when I fired a rifle next to him, and he got mad at me for it. That's the real man there. He has a perfectly, well, I would say it's not a perfectly normal reaction, because a perfectly normal reaction, you're like, what the fuck? And then leave. And he just goes, what the fuck? And then goes back to working. So maybe he's onto something. Maybe he's like, that's the real Buddy. He's an idiot.
He's a dumb cuck from my wife, or bull, or whatever they call him. So then it cuts to it's dark outside, right? And the storm is starting to finally kick up.
I don't know anything about building a fence or woodworking or anything like that, but it's 2 boards across and 7 fence posts.
Yeah.
How is it taking him so long? He said it was before 1.
They make a point. Yeah, he's like, it's not even 1 a.m. yet, because he's like, I don't know, man, I can't finish this today. There's a storm coming, and Walter's like, it's not even 1 a.m. yet. The storm's not going to be here till tonight. You're fine.
PM.
And he has all the parts. He has all the wood in his truck. He's got everything he needs.
Yeah,
it's just sawing 2 boards and then hammering in a bunch of posts.
Let's track it as if so storm season in the Gulf, hurricane season is September, which is a longer day, so it's probably not going to get dark until at least 7 or so. So at a minimum, he had 6 hours to work on this fence. He's not even halfway done when it's dark and he has to stop doing it.
But you guys are forgetting critical things. He smashes his thumb. He gets hit on by the hot wife. He gets shot at. Like, these are things that, like, a 6-hour job, well, it should really be like maybe hour and a half job. That's going to prolong it to a multi-day job because you're dealing with factors that you normally don't deal with. Okay. So give him a break.
The whole scene with him, like, getting hit on by the wife, smashing his thumb and getting bandaged and then getting mad, Nic Cage getting mad at him, is like a 5-minute exchange too. Like, it's not, in
their time, it had, like, that was probably a series of 4.5 hours. He was inside getting his thumb taken care of for a couple hours while she was trying to get him to hammer away on her.
And they make it a point that when the storm starts to roll in, it's dark out, like the sun's setting. I don't know if it's because the storm clouds came in and make everything dark, but right after that, it's like full on nighttime, like in the following scene. So he's out there for six hours or so trying to fix this section of fence that he doesn't even get like halfway finished with.
Maybe he was like normal speed, but then she did something with that voodoo doll. And that made him ridiculously slow.
You're writing a better movie than what we saw.
That couldn't happen because that would mean that there's a reason for the voodoo dolls to exist in the movie.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, spoiler alert. So
I did proper foreshadowing there, where I set something up that we'll talk about later. Yeah. Unlike what this movie did with a bunch of stuff,
with nearly everything.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna point out the fact, like, I think they have money problems. Like, Buddy and his wife have money problems because this dude can't fucking do a damn thing to save his life. Like, a 2-hour job is taking him all day and he can't even get it finished. So he goes back inside and tells Walter, "Hey man, I wasn't able to finish it. The storm's starting to roll in." And Walter is like, "Okay man, well, if you gotta come back tomorrow, I'm only gonna pay you $100 because you didn't finish it in the time that we agreed upon," which
feels fair. Feels fair.
That's reasonable.
That's pretty fair, right? You made an agreement with him that you get it done, and you failed to meet that part. Yeah. But he's all upset about it,
because he's a loser and a terrible
and he needs that $400. The only way to take care of his baby now is to shake it to get it to stop coughing, and so he's just a little distracted. He's like, I was trying to avoid this, but it's 1988. They don't know any better, okay, folks?
Yeah. I think I figured out, though, why Buddy is having money problems, because it takes him all day to do half of a job.
Which, another question, actually, I'll just save it for the couple of questions section if you want.
It's going to be loaded. It's going to be loaded.
Yeah. It's not a big one. It's just, we'll get into it later.
How many times are we going to do that throughout this? Like, what?
Yeah.
I'll save it till we ask the questions.
Save it.
So he tells Walter he can't finish it. And Walter says, "All right, man, well, I'm only going to give you $100 because you didn't meet the agreed upon time frame." Buddy's upset, but he's got to go home. He's like, whatever. He heads out to his truck, and of course, his truck doesn't start. He opens the hood. I don't know why he opened the hood. He looks in there. Apparently, everything looks fine. I don't know why he bothered opening it.
Guessing he wouldn't know how to fix it anyway.
I thought they were
right. It would take him 2
somebody
days to fix
sabotaged
it.
his truck or something.
I guess, but like, he doesn't say anything. He just like opens the hood, and then goes inside because he's getting soaked. It's starting to rain now. He's getting drenched, so he goes back inside, back into the lunatic's house. He's like, this is a good idea. I'm gonna go back inside. This dude was shooting at me earlier. His wife is eye fucking me. I hammer my thumb looking at her ass while he watched.
I'll hang out with these guys all night.
Yeah,
that'll be good.
It's probably safe in there.
They'll
let me stay until I can figure something out.
I got the impression that they did something to his truck to keep him there.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It just doesn't get brought back up really about sabotage.
Act 2. It's about time we had some conflict, wouldn't you say?
Act 2, the acts of this movie are kind of broken up into flashing back into the present, which is really nice, made it easy to take notes. So we cut back to the police station where Foghorn Frasier Crane continues grilling. But this time there's another detective listening in from another room. And it turns out that Buddy has had some issues with the law in the past when he robbed a liquor store with a spray-painted BB gun, casting doubt on his own.
Why did he have to spray paint the BB gun? Like...
I think to spray paint the orange tip so it looked like an actual gun, I'm guessing.
I don't think they did that in 1988, though.
Yeah,
I remember BB guns looking like guns.
Yeah, even now BB guns typically don't have orange tip on the barrel. It's normally just airsoft.
There's I don't know, maybe it was like already a weird colored BB gun. Maybe the scriptwriter forgot. They said it in 1988 for no reason.
It up, dude. Like he was fighting the Viet Cong.
Yeah. It wouldn't have happened yet. Well, it might have. Yeah, I guess he was only in his 20s, so Vietnam would have happened. Kelsey Grammer says something like, well, what would have happened if I hadn't given you the liquor? Because it sets up that he was going to get liquor because his dad ran out and he didn't want his dad to beat him, so he had to go steal liquor by holding up a liquor store. But he goes, well, I guess I never thought about it. If he hadn't given me the liquor.
I kind of took that to kind of set up some sort of like almost like a conflict between him and Nic Cage, because he sees Nic Cage to be sort of like his father, who he hates, obviously, from this scene.
Yeah, I didn't get that. But yeah, that would make sense because Nic Cage is a drunk and a violent, angry drunk, so it would make sense. But it's a thread that doesn't really go anywhere. No. So we gave it more thought than that room.
Well, we do kind of like we do address it later on with the story that he tells Fancy when she's in the bathtub about his mom and stuff. But we'll get to that.
Yeah. But that still doesn't have bearing on.
Not really, no.
Right. All right. So as we established, Buddy heads back inside with Walter and Fancy and asks Walter if he can borrow his car and leave his truck behind so he can check on his wife and baby. Walter delivers one of the best lines in the movie, or I should say Nic Cage delivers one of the best lines in the movie. What do you think? I just let you pull some backdoor trade with a beat-up truck while you steal my Mach 1 Mustang? He does the laugh.
I love that. Again, they say acting is a series of choices, and Nic Cage makes the best choices that I've ever seen. And that is definitely a Nic Cageism.
I think it only happens 3 times in the movie, but it makes such an impact.
It does.
that I specifically requested, independently of what we were all doing, that Patrick pull it for a soundbite, and he already had. So it's a very memorable moment.
To me, it was like his him making fun of this kid because he's young, and being like, oh, that's how kids talk these days. They're little punks who walk around, you know. So, I don't know.
Buddy calls his wife and she gets pissed at him for being the huge loser he clearly is, which is totally fair because he's only having to stay with these weirdos because he's slow as hell and he couldn't finish replacing 7 feet of wooden fence despite working at it for multiple hours. She also makes a great point about him not being able to call a cab, which he says he can't for some reason.
Yeah, why couldn't he have just called the cab and left? I mean, the storm hadn't really kicked in yet. It was just maybe sprinkling a little bit. And I know from experience, because I lived in the South for a little while, that things will operate up until the storm starts to get a little bad. So they don't just call out for the whole day and just like, oh, it's going to be stormy today. Let's not drive anybody. It's, they work until they can't.
I assume it's because he had no money.
Yeah, that's what I figured. And obviously Nic Cage isn't going to spot him some money. They could have addressed. They could have taken 2 lines of dialogue. Why can't you call a cab? I don't have any money.
Yeah, I ain't got no cash.
I don't want to get into it right now. Yeah,
I still work on this damn fence.
Yeah. So anyway, he decides to shack up with this couple because why not? I'll point out here, I tend to like this setup in movies, and Wicker Man kind of did the same thing, where it's like it's not necessarily stranger in a strange land type of setting, but it's like normal person in a weirdo's environment. I guess it kind of is stranger in a strange land. But Dracula's another example where it's framed that some guy shows up at Dracula's castle and everything seems normal, and then it just goes crazier as things go on. So this movie kind of had that as well. He's a normal repairman. He shows up. Things aren't quite what they seem. It's a cool. I like that type of framing for a storyline. That's just me personally. Wicker Man was something similar. So I noticed it was a nice distinction or a nice relation between the 2 movies that had that same type of setup. So anyway, that's not related to anything. I just wanted to point it out. Anyway, Walter offers him a drink, and Buddy tells him he doesn't drink. Probably because he has an alcoholic father.
Yep.
But then decides to hang out with the nutcases for the night to ride out the storm instead of finding a way to get home to his sick wife or sick kid and frigid wife.
So he does take the drink though. So
he does.
Yeah, that's important. He does take the drink, even though he says he doesn't drink. They have meatloaf at an awkward family dinner, and they talk about how Walter and Fancy met, which pisses Walter off for a reason that's never explained in the film. Fancy explains that she was a jazz singer in New Orleans, and he used to be an alluring mix of strength, courage, and hope, but times have changed.
I didn't get why he was like instantly pissed off about that.
I didn't either. I thought it was going to be a setup for something later on in the movie, but it wasn't. It's like he just maybe he didn't want her getting closer to Buddy by explaining the story of their background, but
that makes sense.
He seems to get irrationally angry about her. Like, it's not a bad story. I thought that was the other thing too. Like, he didn't like how they met for some reason or another, but it's just that she was a jazz singer in a club and he came and saw her perform one time and they hooked up.
I'd be pretty proud of that meet cute. That's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
Buddy explains he's been his wife since they've been in 6th grade, and Walter says it's idiotic to only sleep with one woman, and they probably will be divorced when he turns 30. Not a terrible point. Fancy offers to make everyone mint juleps, while Walter and Buddy, even though Buddy just said in the same scene he doesn't drink, takes the julep and drinks it. The two men gab about some fun stuff, like how it makes sense that Buddy likes baseball since it's a soft sport, and he can tell Buddy is having problems at home and wonders when the last time it was that he had his cock sucked. Just idle chit-chat. He also says he can tell Buddy wants to fuck his wife. Again, just idle chit-chat.
Yeah, just as you do.
What other type of small talk would you have in this scenario? Some fancy footwork ensues as she plays footsie with Buddy under the table in front of Walter, who storms out of the room once again to cozy up in his passing out chair. We hear another news report talking about the same missing person, but the report also discloses that he is the 4th person to go missing lately. Grand Isle seems to have their own news station. Only 1,500 people live there.
Yeah, so I looked up some statistics, and maybe they're not talking about the real Grand Isle. Maybe this is like their fictional version of Grand Isle, but the actual Grand Isle is at the very tip of Louisiana, like way down at the very flood prone region down there at the end. And there's only 1,500 people that live there. And like, it seems like the population just keeps falling because of probably hurricanes and flooding and horrible stuff. So if there's only 1,500 people living there, you wouldn't think they would have their own TV station just for that little area. It would be something close by, like, I don't know, Shreveport or what. I don't know what's actually close by there, but like a major town of some sort.
Right.
Also, there's only 1,500 people who live in this town, and 4 different teenagers have gone missing. Like, don't you think it would be pretty easy to like figure out to connect the dots?
Not if the detective is Kelsey Grammer.
That's true.
Trying to figure this out. Fancy tucks Walter in and then leads Buddy on a tour of the house that ends up in their bedroom, but not before passing a door with like 20 locks on it that leads to the basement. Fancy explains that there are bad things that have happened down there before laughing it off. Fancy tells Buddy in the bedroom that that's her favorite room in the house, and then she tells him she's going to slip into something more comfortable because screenwriting is hard. Buddy, a stranger in their house, sits on Walter and Fancy's bed while she changes behind a screen 4 feet away from him. He then spots a bunch of creepy voodoo dolls scattered around the room that he apparently thinks nothing. Fancy proceeds to explain that she's always wanted a big family, but the Lord didn't grant her the ability to have kids of her own. So she seduces Buddy and he goes along with it until she touches his crotch, which causes Buddy to try and leave, and he falls on the floor. This wakes Walter up, who slowly creeps up the stairs. As some more fancy footwork not only unbuttons Buddy's pants with her heel, but also snaps the button off entirely. His pants appear undamaged in every subsequent shot in the film.
Crazy control on that heel to pop that little button off of his pants.
Just unlook it broke it off, and the button goes flying across the room under the door.
And then his pants are fine the whole rest of the movie.
Pants are not, it's never addressed again. I thought it was going to come like he's going to try and run and his pants are going to fall down or something.
Something like that.
Be set up
or
for
he'd
something
come
later
downstairs and walk in front of Walter and his pants are just like unbuttoned and open.
He can't button his pants back up even though he's trying. So, but no, it's never addressed.
We should also address the fact that this is the very last time that those voodoo dolls are ever shown or mentioned. This never comes up again.
They're never actually mentioned. They're just shown.
What's the point of showing those voodoo dolls?
Yeah. It's because they're in the South.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought, spoilers, but I thought maybe each one of them represented a victim of Fanny and Fancy and Walter.
I'm sure at some point. I'm sure at some point in the script they did. There was something more to go, or she was, it's to show that she practices voodoo, like she's trying to have a kid through voodoo or something. But it's never fleshed out. So
it is possible that there was a much better screenplay at the beginning before editing. So I guess we shouldn't rip on it too much.
Walter listens at the door for a while, but apparently doesn't care enough about what's going on inside, and he leaves. Again. Maybe it's like setting up that he's got the cuck fetish. Like he wants this to happen. He knows what's going on in there, but he leaves intentionally knowing what's going on.
I saw a smile on his face as he had his ear to that door. She's getting it. She's going to tell me about it later.
Maybe he wanted to catch them in the act or something. Like that was the plan. Was like, oh, I have justification to kill this guy if I catch him in the act. But I don't hear anything going on in there, so I'll just go down and nail up some more boards.
Right. Buddy heads downstairs, curls up for a nice restful sleep right next to Walter's passing out chair, which to me is like, why is that the place that he decides to sleep after? Right. I don't know. It's just, and he's also right like considering what just happened. Yeah, and considering what just happened, he just leaves and goes to bed. Like I'd be seriously creeped out.
That was a good point. Vince is like he's sleeping next to an open window that's been busted out from the night before during a hurricane. Sleeping next to the passing out chair.
All bad decisions.
The worst possible spot.
He's the dumbest character.
Well, anyway, he's woken up sometime later by thunder, where he finds Walter sitting next to him holding a gun while watching Buddy sleep. Walter says he thought he and Buddy might go get a drink and have a little talk in the attic. Remember, Buddy doesn't drink, but he accepts.
Well, I mean, he has a gun Walter's man cave, pointed at him at the time.
Yeah, I guess at that point it's all okay. Walter's man cave is elegantly decorated with a dartboard and a beautiful stained glass window. Enough rifles to arm a small militia. Also, the stained glass window was not boarded up for some reason, even though it's probably the biggest window in the house. That's an important point later.
Walter and the nicest window in the house. Like that's like the one that you wouldn't want to get broken.
Walter seems to sort of unbutton his pants, and then he sits down in the chair.
Did you guys see that?
I don't know what the point of that was. I didn't know what the point of that was either. Maybe
this is what I thought.
To make fun of.
It's a reverse cuck, so he's the one that wants to get banged by Buddy.
But it's never. Maybe it's just a Nic Cage thing to make the scene more uncomfortable or something.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's because Nic Cage has put on some pounds, and I don't think that. I think his pants are digging into his gut.
I'm gonna unbutton my pants. Is that okay? Actually, I don't think he should. Oh, you're doing it. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Do it.
I'm gonna pull a Louis C.K. here.
No one will notice.
It's okay if I masturbate in front of you, right?
Is that all right? You said yes.
You said $400.
I'll give you an extra 100.
Just watch me play with it a little.
Anyway, after adjusting his pants, he asks Buddy if he ever thinks about his own death, as you do. He says he chose Buddy for a reason because he knew that he was on the USS Stark, which was apparently attacked in Iraq in 1987 by a fighter jet, which killed 37 people and injured 21 more. Quick fact, this appears to be the only reason this movie is set in 1988.
Yeah.
I thought that it was set in 88 as a both for that and because they needed the character to be a Vietnam vet, and also they needed an explanation of why he couldn't just like call the police or something, or I don't know, like
a lot of times
to make it more convenient that he was trapped at this house, maybe because there's less modes of communication back then.
A lot of times nowadays it seems like movies are set in the past just to get rid of the cell phone plot hole. Like, because there's so many ways to get a hold of people, to let people know what's going on and all that kind of stuff. But back then, you know, a lot of people don't remember the dark ages when we all just had one phone in the house and that was the only way you could contact somebody, which was amazing in a lot of circumstances. And I really wish we could go back to it. But at the same time, yeah.
Walter then explains that his military career was ended by friendly fire when he was 17. 2 weeks after he was sent home, his entire squad was killed in Vietnam, and he wishes he could have died with them. So he's got some survivor's guilt. Instead, he had the misfortune of marrying a gorgeous rich woman who owns a giant house. Womp womp. I think at one point Fancy talks about like this house has been in her family for like 150 years. So like, and obviously Walter doesn't have a job, so they're independently wealthy. It doesn't look like either of them work, and they're just rich loners, and his life sucks apparently.
Hey, so apparently, like right. I wasn't positive. We'll bring this up in a couple of questions, but it seems like they're on some land or something because there doesn't seem to be any neighbors. Which is, when he shoots the guy and he falls through his fence, none of the neighbors seem to notice at all. So I'm guessing that they have. And apparently they're rich enough for this guy
to try and rob him in the first place. Yeah. So, but they're not secluded enough for a couple of lone Girl Scouts to wander up to the front door at the very beginning of the journey.
I mean, they got to make their sales. They got to make their sales. They're going to go door to door. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I kind of figured that the property was like an old Southern property, either a plantation
like a plantation
or just family. I mean, a lot, especially in Louisiana, a lot of families would buy large lots of land and then pass it on down the generations. So I mean, like they really did want to isolate this whole story by being in the South, being in an area where you would have family-owned property with nobody's around you for miles, and there's no technology that we have today because it's set in 1988.
So at this point, I actually paused the movie and I did some research and some math. Walter says that the attack that wiped out his squad was in Da Nang. U.S. Marines came ashore at Da Nang in 1965, putting this as the absolute earliest date when Walter's squad could have been attacked. If Walter was 17 when he went to war, and this movie is taking place in 1988, that means that the oldest Walter could possibly be is 40. Nicolas Cage was about 55 when this movie was filmed. I present these facts with no further comment.
He's the ageless wonder.
Well, all that drinking really made for a haggard 40-year-old.
Which, to be fair, it could really, and realistically, I mean, you see people that are alcoholics, they tend to look older because of the damage that they're doing to their body.
Yeah,
but I thought he was in his 30s. The way he looked,
My thought was going to be. One of my thoughts was that maybe they originally wrote this with a younger actor in mind, and they ended up getting Nicolas Cage, and we're like, we can't turn down Nicolas Cage, so we'll just make it work. But I was like, wait a minute, this is only the 80s, and he was 17. He shouldn't be that old.
I was doing the math too. I was like, this doesn't make sense. But I carried on.
I feel like 1988 comes from because they wanted to do something with both of them having military experience, and there was kind of a gap there between Vietnam and like the Iraq War and stuff, but they had this USS Stark thing that happened, and this was the one way that they could kind of bring those characters together.
Yeah, well, they could have set it in like the Korean War or something and have something happen, set it like 10 years further back because that was the 50s or 60s or whatever. But anyway, nobody knows about the Korean War. Everybody cares about the Vietnam War, so it makes sense.
Hey, I've seen MASH.
So through this prodding, Buddy is coaxed to regale a war story of his friend burning to death, to which Walter angrily rails against the government because they gave soldiers nothing in return for their service. So that's the first part of which this sort of makes its way into the plot, that you see that Walter is the bitter Vietnam vet because he got shit on for everything that they tried to do for the country, even though he was just a 17-year-old who didn't really see any action and got discharged on a medical injury and sent home. So he didn't really get to do a lot.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in my life, I've seen a lot of this where it's like somebody who was in the military for like barely any time and didn't see any action. Those are the people who seem to be the most like hardcore military everything. Like, we've got to support our troops, and those are the people who like rail against any kind of like anti-troops, anti-military anything. I
haven't noticed that, but if that's true, then maybe this is more accurate than I gave it credit for, so that's fine.
I think it's a little bit of guilt of not being able to serve in the capacity that they wanted to. So they feel more vested in making sure that people appreciate the folks that are able to actually carry on and have a career in the military, whether it's 20 years or 4 years.
I also think maybe there's some psychological, like they weren't exposed to the horrors of war the same way that people who had to serve those multiple years were. So maybe they still glorify it more in a way that actual combat veterans are more jaded and they don't want to think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
At this point, Walter chucks a bag of money at Buddy's feet, tells him he'll give him $20,000 to kill his wife to save her from dying slowly from blood cancer. He gives Buddy a rag and some cyanide and explains how cyanide works in a way that only Nicolas Cage would. He tells her just pour it on the rag, put it on her face, hold it there. She'll go to sleep and she'll die.
That's a pretty accurate representation of how he said it. Okay, hold on. I gotta stop real quick. Like, just a quick. Why would he? I won't say this to the end because it doesn't need that much time. But like, why would he trust that he could actually accomplish this if he couldn't build a fence?
Well, apparently he's more successful at getting close enough to fuck his wife than anything he attempted with the fence. So it actually might be more plausible than not.
I guess. But you're asking a guy who spent time on a Navy ship, who had no hand-to-hand combat, had no, he wasn't in any firefights. Yeah. Like this dude wasn't trained to kill. He was most likely a maintenance member or somebody that, supporting staff of that ship. You go in to ask this guy to commit murder.
Just we've already established he thinks Buddy is soft and thinks he's a pussy because so why would he entrust him to
deception.
Do it?
Yeah,
sure.
I had some questions about this because, so this was the plan all along. Obviously, he's been planning to have to pay Buddy to kill his wife
in the attic
this whole time.
Ready to go, give this spiel.
So all these convenient little things that happened to keep Buddy there were obviously done by Nic Cage.
Mm-hmm. Or so it seems.
So it seems, yeah.
That's called tease in the industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Or at least it was in an earlier version of that. So at this point, I then also stopped and I Googled, is inhaling cyanide deadly? Because I wasn't sure if you could kill people that way or just, ingest. I've only heard of ingesting cyanide, but I guess cyanide gas is also a thing, but I didn't think about it. So now that that's in my search history, I hope no one I know dies by cyanide poisoning anytime soon, because I will become a primary suspect. I also Googled blood cancer symptoms because I didn't know if blood cancer was a real thing. So I really hope that the symptoms of blood cancer don't mimic cyanide poisoning and that nobody I know dies of blood cancer as well, because both of those, if there's a detective investigating it that's not Kelsey Grammer, I will probably be suspect number one.
Did you find out, does it actually, if you inhale it, will you die from it?
Yes, you can. That is actually the number one cause of people dying by cyanide, is some accidental inhalation of some chemical that puts off cyanide gas and kills them. So yes.
Then I have a question about a scene that's coming up. A pretty big question.
Yes, I do too.
So it was true. You could just pour it on a rag, put it over her mouth, and presumably kill her. So they did their research there, just like I was forced to do. Buddy immediately agrees to kill Fancy, and he heads down to her room to do the deed. Fancy's taking a bath and singing along to Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. By the way, what the hell time is it? I wondered this as well.
Because I had this question so many times.
It's hours later.
Because it was dark. They ate, and
Storm
then he
came
fell
in,
asleep.
Nightfall. Then he fell asleep. Then they woke up. Then she seduced him in the bedroom. Or no, she seduced him in the bedroom. Then he went down, fell asleep, woke up, went up, had the chat with Nicolas Cage, who was still awake because he'd been sitting in the pass-out chair. Mm-hmm. Then Fancy is still awake, not only awake, but drinking tons of wine and sitting in the bath singing a song. So it's got to be like 3 or 4 in the morning or something.
That's what I thought. It was like, at least 2 or 3, somewhere in there.
Yeah. At this point, I seriously was like, are these vampires? Like, are these characters? Is that what the setup is going to be? Because there's blood cancer and they're doing this weird thing where they're like, they're up all night and she's like seducing him and doing weird voodoo. I thought there was seriously going to be a third act twist where there was some supernatural aspect to these two characters and why they're so bizarre.
Nic Cage's beard and his hair kind of makes him look like a vampire too. So
right. Yeah. So I mean, spoilers, no, they're not. That's too interesting. But anyway, so they have this chat.
Stay tuned.
Before then, Buddy watches her from the doorway like a teenager who's just walked into a girl's locker room. Fancy beckons him in and says that it's a scar on her leg. It's from her mom stabbing her with a fork for not minding her manners at the dinner table. Again, a little piece of character setup. It goes nowhere. It doesn't mean anything in the movie. It's just there. I didn't even notice the scar when I saw it, but I kind of feel like maybe the actress has a scar on her leg for real and they wanted to put that in something. It kind of felt like something like that.
I got the impression that they just wanted to show her legs and for Buddy to be ogling her and staring at her legs.
But she's already in the bath, so there's already a perfectly
soaked up,
logical setup for him seeing her legs, Buddy then says that his childhood was also messed up, and he recounts the story of his mom dying in a boating accident when he was 6, and his dad blaming the kids for it and drinking himself into a coma. He also points out his dad is still in a coma right now. So I wonder if that's a recent thing that's happened and his dad has just fallen into a coma. Or he's just been in a coma for years after alcohol poisoning. It doesn't matter, ultimately, of course.
Is that really a thing? Can you actually drink yourself into a coma?
Yes, you can. There's a coworker of my wife did that over quarantine because apparently servers there's tons of alcoholics that work in the serving industry or in the bartending industry. Who would have thought? So this guy was a total alcoholic. He got laid off because the restaurant shut down, and he just turned to basically doing nothing but drinking for 3 months straight. And he ended up drinking himself into a coma, and then he died in the hospital. So you can't. It basically gives you brain damage, and then you you go into a coma and you don't wake up.
Jeez.
So. Again, something that was eerily accurate for the script. They did their research.
Surprising.
So this story of his mom dying and his dad being an alcoholic to the point of almost dying apparently gets Fancy all sorts of moist because she immediately sleeps with Buddy on the floor of the bathroom with Walter in the next room. Because Walter's at this point following because he is expecting Buddy to kill his wife, and so he wants to make sure that he does. Yeah. And then he sees them having sex and then just lets them have sex, I guess. It doesn't try to stop it. His motivations are slightly unclear.
I got the impression that he was just he was downstairs just waiting nervously. But again, that doesn't track with things that happen later on. I don't know.
Right.
Even Kentucky Fried Crane thinks this is fucked up, as we bookend Act 2 by returning to the present in the police station with Buddy and the detective. Buddy justifies the whole thing by saying it had been 6 months since he'd had sex with his wife, and that Fancy is crazy, but sexier than hell. This is also not a terrible point. He then explains that he only survived the night by pitting Fancy and Walter against each other. So now we've come through the second act, and we are set up for the glorious denouement and conflict resolution that definitely doesn't come out of nowhere and leave more questions than answers for the final act of
3, the resolution.
This is where shit gets really weird. Yes. And it goes off the rails completely. So Fancy and Buddy wake up naked on the floor. Again, what the fuck time is it? What time is it? Because they fell asleep. So he had
it's still dark out.
Got seduced by her, went and took a nap, woke up, hung out with Nic Cage for a bit, went into the bathroom, hung out with her, then had sex with her, then fell asleep and woke up, still dark out. So what the hell time is it? Fancy spots the cyanide. It's like he didn't even put it in his pocket. He just drop it over here. Buddy asks if she's actually sick. She, of course, says no, and immediately heads downstairs to confront Walter. Walter is busy nailing more boards up for some reason, because he had boards already up.
It's been 12 hours. It's been 12 hours. The hurricane's well underway, and he's still boarding up the house. I don't know if it's been 12 hours. It's been multiple hours, as we've established. It's got to be close to morning.
And he's still trying to be reaching towards the end of the hurricane, I would assume. I don't know. I guess maybe not. He's shocked when he sees his still alive wife come downstairs with Buddy after having been missing for quite some time. Assumably not that much time, but enough time to make him question what the hell he was doing all that time. Cage gives Buddy the best glare of the movie. I love that shot so much. That just creepy stare, right at him. That shot to me.
It's in the trailer. That shot's in the trailer.
That deserves at least a 1 on Rotten Tomatoes. It's also the poster. Is that glare at him?
Yeah. It's like, and Buddy just shrugs. He just shrugs it off. I don't know.
What are you going to do?
She's hot. Look at her.
I don't want to kill her. Okay. Fancy tells Walter that they need to come to a new place of understanding with each other, that they should forgive each other, and that she has nothing but love for him. She then immediately stabs him in the hand with a survival knife, which Walter takes about as good as you would expect. He knocks Fancy out and pulls a gun on Buddy. Tries to force Buddy to complete the job of killing his wife by telling him to pour the cyanide on the rag. Pour it on the rag. Again, that's another.
That's the first
amazing.
That's the first Nic Cage freak out in the movie. Like the first time he gets to let loose and do a Nic Cage level line reading.
Suddenly, a very convenient tree limb busts through the window, and Buddy splashes the cyanide into Walter's eyes, wrestles the gun away from him, throws him to the ground, and very fakely punches him in the face before choking him out. I mean, we could save this for a couple of questions, but wouldn't the cyanide have killed Walter? I mean, he splashes a bottle into his face.
Right in his face. Like in his eyes, in his mouth,
into his
nose.
eyes, into his nose, in his mouth.
Yeah.
He would have died,
and
right?
I know, like, cyanide, you put cyanide in your mouth, it kills you in seconds. Like, that's the whole point of why they used fake cyanide capsules in their teeth or whatever, so they could just bite down on it and die. And I gotta wonder, I didn't Google this because I wasn't going to Google, can inhaling cyanide kill you, and then can getting cyanide poured in your face kill you, because that would definitely tip off the NSA. But I gotta assume if you get it into your eyes, like, that's mucous membranes, that goes right into your system and would probably have just killed him.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, I don't know. I think that would have been instant death, but I'm no expert. Apparently, Nigel is, though.
Although,
Nigel knows everything about cyanide.
I guess there could be.
That's Nigel Anderson.
James Nigel Anderson.
Although, given we haven't gotten there yet, but the twist that's about to happen, given that twist, maybe there wasn't actually cyanide in the bottle. Maybe it was all just a setup.
That is something that I thought of, too.
Grandmama's mint julep.
Buddy then ties Walter to the banister of the stairs, where Walter asks Buddy to slay him. I love that read too. It was like, kill me, I'm ready. Slay me. Slay me, I'm ready. Buddy and Fancy begin to run off together in Walter's Mustang in the middle of a hurricane in one of the most flood-prone regions on Earth. But Buddy stops when Walter tells Fancy to let Buddy in on her dirty little secrets. This is where shit goes really off the fucking rails.
Yes.
Fancy tries to get Buddy to take her in front of Walter and look him right in the eye while Buddy makes her come, which I was really hoping would happen. I mean, just to ratchet up the insanity.
I'm telling you guys, like, the whole time this movie's playing out, I'm like, this is just a cuck story. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
and then when she said that, I was like, yes, they're gonna do it.
I thought this was like, this is their anniversary gift to each other. Like, they do this every year. Like, this is
I thought that's where this is going. Nope. Yeah. He pusses out. He's a soft man who likes baseball and can't hammer his wife in front of him.
Thankfully, the movie knew a different way to ratchet up the insanity. Walter tells Buddy to have a look in the basement, and as soon as he does, Fancy starts blasting at him. She shoots it at him a couple of times, and he jumps into a storeroom that comes equipped with its own drugged out guy who is all hooked up on, I couldn't hear the line properly, but I looked it up. It's a fertility drug of some sort.
So I had closed captioning going for this whole movie to make it easier to track the cursing. And it literally, when he says, like, it just says inaudible in the closed caption. Like, it doesn't even tell you. The one time I wanted to actually know what was being said, it literally just says inaudible. So it's not important, apparently.
Oh my God.
Awesome.
I think, I'm not positive, but I think that was the guy from the beginning, right? That was the dude who was shot.
He's wearing the same hoodie. It's the teenager that got shot.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in the last news update, I think they specifically call out what he was wearing, which is like a black tracksuit with white.
I remember this tracksuit.
And he has the white stripes down the arm.
I remember that from the beginning, but I don't remember it from that scene if he was still wearing that same tracksuit. But
so it's a guy
I
that
didn't
got
know
shot.
that he was being given drugs. I thought she was taking his blood, or he was hooked up like he had, because he had a.
Well, he had
there was
like
like
an
blood
IV
coming
bag
out of
coming
the,
down.
Yeah, he
He
had
did. You're right. I thought he was
like,
which fertility drug makes sense. We'll get to it later.
yeah. Very odd
But,
at the moment, but then it made sense down the road.
But again, I thought like, oh fuck, they're vampires. Like she's draining his blood into a thing, and he's just being kept alive as like human chattel, so that they can continue to milk him for blood or whatever.
Yeah, I thought blood.
But
or
again,
maybe it was like the cancer thing was true, and so they were just
she was using transfusions,
doing transfusions, which would
Another
be convenient.
better story.
Yeah, both of these are facets of a better movie.
How lucky this burglar has the same blood type as you, honey.
Yeah, but apparently he's just laying there drugged. And
So
sort of
the drugged
out
out
of it.
guy explains that he's been there for days, which I don't know if that tracks with the hiring of Buddy for the fence, because I thought that it was the next day, but apparently it's been
I thought
days.
they specifically call out in one of the news reports that the teenager had been missing for 4 days.
Okay. That makes sense.
So
Taking his sweet time getting that fence built.
He also says there are more people like him in the house, which is interesting. He also has a piece of cloth in his hand with Japanese writing of some sort. Well, we don't know if it's Japanese or Chinese or whatever at that point. We just know that it's some sort of Asian writing on like a little piece of cloth. Unless you speak Japanese or Chinese, I guess you would get that instantly. But I don't know.
Right.
Then Walter and Fancy have a conversation that makes it seem as though this whole night has been some sort of game that they've been playing with Buddy. This is where things go kind of off the rails, because like, okay, so was he actually planning on killing his wife, or was that actually water in that thing? Was he just trying to see if Buddy had the stones to actually try and kill her, and then they were gonna like do something where they're like, oh, you really were gonna try and kill my wife, or something like that, but apparently not.
it's like they were somehow both playing a game, but they were two different games, but they both knew that they were playing a game together.
And
it doesn't.
And also
it
this
doesn't
whole
make
weird
sense.
subplot of like, well, we'll get to it. Buddy heads to the attic to find a gun instead of running out the front door. Which is okay. He shoots at Walter with a fresh clip that apparently only had one bullet in it, because it immediately is out of bullets, or it jammed conveniently. They don't really explain, but they go round and round before, I guess, another convenient branch hits the stained glass window. I wasn't sure what was happening there. It just immediately just broke.
Just blew it open.
How that doesn't happen.
I don't know. I mean, you can. It can if you don't properly board your stuff up. You can cause pressure differentials that will cause other things to break. So maybe it actually did happen because the window downstairs broke open with the branch. That could cause a big gust of wind could come through and actually implode the window that wasn't boarded up.
I feel like you're putting way more thought into it than they did.
Yeah, just convenient. The window shatters because it's a storm.
Because the window just shatters. It causes a big piece of glass to hit Walter in the back, which gives Buddy the opportunity to trip him, which causes him to fall through the open attic floor door. Buddy finally gets the idea to run out the front door. For some reason, he didn't go there first. He went for the gun first, which I guess points out something about Buddy's character.
Yep.
He's just an idiot. He fiddles with the locks for a second, but then is knocked out by Fancy with a pan. Morning finally comes, and Buddy finds himself in his truck with the drugged out guy from earlier, who is now dead, which it looks like he was shot in the head. Did you guys get that? He had like a little thing on his head.
Yeah, he had a blood spatter or a blood hole.
Wouldn't they have found I guess that's for a couple of questions, but like, wouldn't they have found the drugs that he was on, the IV and all that stuff?
Not
Also,
down here in the
wasn't
South, boy. We don't detect like that. We go off of hard facts, which are stories and things we see.
How is he also in the truck that was?
Yeah,
which I guess means it was sabotaged and then repaired.
That's what I thought. It was like Walter
plant
fixed it, put whatever back that was missing, and
Yeah.
then drove him there.
and crashed into a ditch to make it look like a car
and then somehow
accident.
the police find him in the middle of nowhere, like some backcountry road surrounded by trees.
Yeah, I was going to say, before he realizes what is going on, his truck is surrounded by the police, bringing us full circle to him sitting in front of Detective Leghorn himself. Foghorn Leghorn.
You see, boy, we found you in that truck with that dead man.
Buddy asks for his lawyer and a phone call, to which Kelsey Grammer explains that in the South, you don't actually have any rights because in Grand Isle, they don't subscribe to no big city nonsense. Buddy tells him
law out here.
Buddy tells him to go check out the basement, to which Foghorn asks, "Why are you so fascinated with that basement?" As if he hadn't heard the story that he just told him. Like, obviously, all the things I just told you are the reason I'm fascinated with that basement. The detective who has been hanging out in the other room, who is apparently actually a competent detective, she hears Buddy mention the cloth with the Japanese lettering on it, and that's good enough for her to believe his entire story. Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Because, there's a reason for it.
Then Kelsey Grammer gives his theory of what actually happened, and it goes a little something like this, okay? While Buddy was in the Navy, he developed a taste for violence. He came home, found a girl, and had a kid, but domestic life wasn't what he'd hoped for. Then he bumped into an ex-Marine who pissed him off. So Buddy boned his wife and then killed a teenager who just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And he knows he's right. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. What the fuck does the teenager have to do with any of that stuff?
Exactly. Like, I get why he's trying to connect the dots, because he was found in the truck with a dead teenager. Mm-hmm. But just taking that on face value has nothing to do with the entire story that he just told. Like, you'd also think, wouldn't he be interviewing the couple?
You would think,
that
right?
This whole story that takes place around.
No, didn't even think to like go to their house and question them or anything. Just like, well, I'm sure he's full of shit.
I mean, this is presumably happening the next day because Buddy's still wearing the clothes that are and all bloodied up. So it's like they find him in the truck at dawn or whatever, take him to the police station, book him, take him in to interrogate him, and they've been going, the last couple hours have been part of this interrogation. But he doesn't even think to send anybody out to question.
Apparently, their whole police force is the two of them. There's him, and then there's the woman in the other room, and then I guess some cops eventually. The detective then tells Buddy's wife about his infidelity, and she leaves him on the spot. Again, she's pretty shrill and frigid, but at the same time, she makes a lot of sense. Everything that she does makes sense, and every question that she has and every suggestion that she has for Buddy, that all makes sense. Like, I could just go to work at this coffee shop, and then we wouldn't be starving to death, and our baby wouldn't die of whooping cough or whatever the hell's going on there.
Yeah.
The other detective who's been hanging out in the other room overheard Buddy mention the cloth. She mentions a newspaper she saw at some point with a picture of a missing teenage girl, Japanese teenage girl, wearing a silk dress that had the writing on it, or had writing of some sort on it, and that's good enough for her and Foghorn to just immediately switch and completely believe everything that Buddy had to say, which is amazing.
I mean, that's good detective work. She got the lead from him and decides to follow up on it. I don't know about immediately disregarding suspect number one, who was literally found with a dead body, but it was good enough to follow up on some of the things he was saying and maybe get them to go out to the house and question this couple.
Hey, Kelsey Grammer, I saw a newspaper that had a picture of a teenage girl, and she was wearing a Japanese dress with Japanese writing on it, and here's a police report about a missing Japanese girl. Well, I'll be. He's been telling the truth the entire time. The detectives head to Fancy and Walter's house, finally. I guess Kelsey Grammer had something better to do than be in that scene.
Right, he wasn't there that day.
He's not there at all.
It's like it's the woman detective and some other random detective we've never seen before.
Yeah.
and like 2 cops.
Walter explains away being beaten to a pulp by saying the power went out and he tripped and fell on his face, and then he cut his hand on a broken window.
He's also gesticulating with his right arm, which is the same arm that got impaled with like a 7-inch piece of glass that happened just that night, like through the shoulder when the window shattered, and he fell out of the attic stairwell and then rolled down the stairs and landed on his same shoulder. He doesn't even face it. He's moving his arm around, talking. You know, that's something I noted.
By the way, I don't know if you guys noticed the other cop who speaks in that scene. Like, I don't know what was going on with that guy, but his voice really made me laugh.
Here's a search warrant. We have reason to believe that you might be performing illegal activities.
I think there's some illegal activities.
That's his version of a southern accent, dude.
We'll get some local casting here.
Yeah, we're gonna
probably shot in Canada as well. Like Wicker Man. The cops go straight to the basement immediately, which now suddenly has no locks on it. Did you notice that? There was no locks on that door. And then
I assume they took the locks off to make it look less suspicious, maybe. But then they didn't clear out the actual basement, so.
Yeah, so what was the point of any of that? I don't, didn't they? All right, we'll get to it in the question. So now we finally get to see what's in the basement. We finally get to find out what this big, dark secret is that this movie's been hiding from us the whole time. Except not at all. Fancy and Walter have been locking women in the basement, which is the size of a missile silo all of a sudden. I don't know if you noticed that. It's all concrete. I don't know. That was weird.
It's all concrete, corridors.
Metal cells.
They've been apparently, at this point, they've been holding these teenage girls for no apparent reason, because they don't let us know what the hell has actually been happening until the convenient news report at the very, very end of the movie.
Yeah, literal end of the movie.
And last thing that's said in the movie. Walter says he won't be a part of Fancy's bullshit anymore and decides to bail, but not before delivering another classic line. "Officer, my cat is stuck up in a tree. Will you shoot it down for me?"
I want to stop you here. He says "ossifer" in that line. He doesn't say "officer." I rewound it and watched it 3 times. He says "ossifer, my cat's stuck in a tree. Would you shoot it down?"
He's still drunk.
Because he's drunk.
That's all that whiskey. Those CBRs.
The subtitles do say "officer," but he pronounces it "ossifer" as the classic drunk line.
Then he knocks out the goofy talking cop and then speeds off in his Mustang. The cops all shoot at his car, but for some reason don't jump in their own cars and give chase at any point, nor do they seem to alert other police officers of this madman on the loose. They don't even get on the radio or anything. They just what can you do?
They just shoot at him and he gets away.
Quick, shoot him before he gets out. He's gone. I guess that's the end of this.
Oh, well, put out
that's
an
how they do it in the South.
Kelsey Grammer says that they found a nightmare in the basement, but he never says what they found and lets Buddy go. Buddy doesn't even ask. He's just like, nightmare. Right.
That's the other thing too. They just let him go. They don't hold him for further questions, because now there's
the whole story,
active,
I guess.
Active other murder investigation going on at this house or whatever they're investigating, and they still let this witness go.
Well, that's city stuff. That's big time city stuff that they would keep him. But this is the South, boy. We don't cotton to that around her.
Buddy finds his wife leaving with the baby, and she takes off to her mother's house. Walter is then on the lam for at least as long as it takes for Buddy's face to heal up. Thanks to those idiot cops who didn't do anything to try and stop him. There's a little weird scene with him hearing a baby toy go off, which I guess was to alert that Walter's still out there and he could be coming for him at any point. I didn't really get what the hell the point of that scene was.
And
he's drinking heavily. Drinks heavily out of a whiskey bottle, so it's now he's becoming Walter. I guess. I don't know what that scene was about.
He's becoming his dad.
Oh, yeah.
It's a cycle.
Suddenly we hear a shot outside the only coffee shop in town, apparently. And we see a freshly shaven Walter in full military regalia holding Buddy's wife at gunpoint. Quick fact here, or quick fact. How do you say that? Quick fact. Cage, I took this directly from something that somebody wrote on IMDb, so I'm literally just saying exactly what they say here. Cage was supposed to be an ex-Marine, but he's wearing a bizarre-looking quasi-military uniform that doesn't belong to any branch of the armed forces, with the insignia rank of both Army Private 2nd and Specialist 4th, along with a checkered tie and 2 Army marksmanship medals. So most of it seems to be Army related.
Yeah, because it's all green, right? And like Marine dress is like the blue, right, with the flat cap and the white flat cap and the blue dress, the blue dress uniform.
The uniform he's wearing is not.
It's like
it doesn't pertain to any military.
It's like hodgepodge.
Yeah, it's like, what does a military uniform look like?
I don't know. Just go find a bunch of random stuff and put it on this green uniform.
Yeah, it's like
in my mind, because he was on the run, he went to some Army surplus store or a Value Village and just bought it. Bought whatever random dress uniform he could find. Because he ran off and he didn't keep that in his car, presumably. So
yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. It's like, well, this movie's insane, so he probably stopped at a thrift store and just picked up whatever he could find because he has a mission.
Well, maybe we put more thought into it than they put into it. Also, I figured it was just in his car, like he just keeps a military uniform, or he snuck back into the house. I don't know how he got it, but anyways. Walter compares not dying with his platoon to Buddy not having his wife and kid around, and then makes Buddy admit that he did nothing to save anyone on the ship after it was attacked. So he kind of like admits his own cowardice of his friend who was burning alive, and he did nothing to save him, which pisses Walter off because he's like, I thought we had something in common, even though I didn't do anything to help anybody. Because
just ran away. Like he calls Buddy a coward, and then I just ran away from my wife and cops instead of facing repercussions of my actions.
Suddenly, Kelsey Grammer shows up with a bunch of cops, and Walter demands that Fancy be released, to which Detective Leghorn says that they put her in a mental facility. Nic Cage delivers another gold line read about the system that doesn't care about him and his fellow Marines. I don't know what he was going for there. Like, this is how Army people talk, right? Okay. This works.
Like Forrest Gump meets Nicolas Cage. That's all I could think.
Walter charges at the cops with 2 guns, which he didn't have another gun. I don't know where the other gun came from, but he had one gun on Lisa, apparently, and then switched it over to Buddy, and then suddenly had another, which I guess he could have pulled from somewhere. But
yeah, I think he pulled it out of his pocket, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
Because he does he lets go of Buddy, and then he does this weird motion, and I think he's pulling it out of his pocket.
Yeah. So he charges at them with 2 guns, and he finally gets to go out in a blaze of glory like he's always wanted. Buddy is also shot in the process, even though he's behind the car and 6 feet from Walter.
He gets shot in the chest or something.
Another police thing that's actually pretty accurate, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I'm pretty sure. How did you put it? Kentucky Fried Frasier.
Kentucky Fried
Crane. I'm pretty sure he's the one that shot Buddy just as a fuck you.
I don't like you, son. You don't believe in God.
I don't like you, big city boys.
Walter dies to the sound of Buddy's baby crying, which is the worst possible thing you can hear at the end of your life. I mean, I couldn't think of a worse thing to hear as I'm dying than a baby crying.
I would have put that gun in my mouth and pulled the trigger just to shut that baby up.
Get this over with quicker. Buddy and his wife decide to work things out in the hospital after he's been shot. And he, at long last, learns to appreciate what he has in life. Finally, thanks to a news report on a radio somewhere off screen, somewhere. I don't know if it's in the hospital or what, but a convenient radio station says, we find out that Fancy and Walter were forcing the teenagers in the basement to have babies against their will, presumably because Fancy couldn't have any of her own. And for some reason, starved those 2 Girl Scouts from the beginning of the movie to death.
Okay.
Yeah, but those Girl Scouts run away. They don't come into the house. They run away. So did Walter chase them down and bring them back and starve them? Or, I don't know. But yeah, that was the biggest.
I don't get that at all. Like that part, I was like, what the fuck? I had to rewind and watch that again. I was like, what the fuck? Why?
They found these 2 Girl Scouts emaciated in the basement. I was just like, okay, all right. Let's get into a couple of questions. That's the end of the movie. The credits come up right after you find out they starved these 2 children to death for no reason.
Still good.
The biggest shot in that scene, Nic Cage's final scene, is that Kelsey Grammer was actually there. Because I was convinced that he shot the whole movie in one day in the room that they had set up for the interrogation thing, and that was the end of the scenes. So the fact that they got him to come back for a second day, come back for a second day on location and film outside the coffee shop was actually pretty astounding to me.
Walter, we could settle this over a beer. I don't drink no more.
I sure as hell done drinking.